What y'all listening to?
Limelight Highlight Podcast.
What is up, guys? Welcome back to the podcast. The podcast that highlights all positive things and brings them into the limelight. It is the Limelight Highlight Podcast, and as always, I am your host, Jonathan Rosario. I want to start off by saying thank you, everybody, for the birthday shout-outs. I felt the love. My birthday was June 13th, last Thursday. Ain't do nothing too crazy. I celebrated on Saturday. We went to this whiskey house. I love whiskey. They have some pretty good food. Prices were pretty good too. But that was later on during the night on a Saturday. And during the day, I actually, I always talk about volunteering. And I'm talking about all the positive things, but I'm not doing anything. So I went out and I decided to be about it instead of talk about it. And I I volunteered at this event called American Valor, set up by a retired Navy SEAL, and he pairs vets as well as people who are still in the service with Gold Star families. Excuse me. And if you don't know what a Gold Star family is, it's a family member that lost a loved one in military service. So I got a mentee, got to hang out. We did a whole bunch of field, activities. There was a bunch of events. They had some prizes. So it was a really good time. I'm super sore. I'm so out of shape, but I had a lot of fun. I'm still feeling it today. But before we get into the podcast, a couple upcoming events. Block is back. From what I heard through the grapevine, the Block is Back fundraiser, the beef and beer, was a success. All the raised money from that will go back into the community as well as helping their next event on July 27th from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. at Rivera Recreation Center. This will be the third annual Peace and Play event. I will give you guys more details the closer we get to that event. And of course, September 15th, Babes Who Brunch, all women entrepreneurs out there, all women who need a little more positivity and be surrounded by like-minded women. The Women's Empowerment Mixture will feature a great brunch menu, various vendors, speakers, Q&A panel, and giveaways with music and more. So go visit thequeencorner.com for some tickets and more info on that event. And if you guys are a vendor or have anything or a speaker, check out the Queen Corner. See how you can get involved. Now on to the show. So happy Father's Day to those fathers out there. Just like Mother's Day when I gave a shout out, we're going to keep that same energy, and all the dads who are just dads because they did some stuff with a woman that don't make them a father, they can kick rocks as well. So all the dads who support their kids, who are in their kids' life, trying to help, even though it may not be the easiest thing, happy Father's Day to you. And as always, as we always have a brief history with whatever holiday is coming up, here's a quick brief history for Father's Day. Father's Day was actually celebrated June 19th in 1910, that long ago, in the state of Washington. But it actually didn't become a nationwide holiday until about 58 years after Mother's Day became an official holiday. So if you guys remember the Mother's Day episode, we did a little history with when President Woodrow Wilson officially made Mother's Day holiday. So for those who don't know, Father's Day didn't catch on as good as quickly as Mother's Day did, because who doesn't love their mama? There's always exceptions, but fathers were not really traditionally known as being very sentimental, being very emotional with their kids and stuff. They're always, the man of the house, the authoritative figure. So as with many holidays, the church actually sponsored this one. The nation's first actual event honoring Father's Day was during a sermon in memory of 362 men who died in an explosion at Fairmount Coal Company in West Virginia. It was a one-time thing because of that crazy tragedy for all those men that died, but it wasn't an annual thing until the following year. A woman named Sonora Smart Dodd, it's a real weird name, but she tried to establish an official equivalent to Mother's Day, Father's Day, and she was one of 6 children whose mother had died a long time ago, And so her father raised her and 6 others. So you gotta think she was pretty appreciative of her father. And she went to local churches. She went to the YMCA back then, shopkeepers. She even went to government officials. Jeez, I can't even speak today. And just to get a little more backing for her idea. And she was actually successful. And Washington State celebrated the nation's first statewide Father's Day, June 19th, 1910. It became a national holiday in 1972. So you got to think that was a long time ago. It took a while to catch, but it did. So shout out to all the fathers out there. Once again, happy Father's Day to my dad. Happy Father's Day to my grandfather. And all the men in your family who you can call father or even father figures. Everybody deserves a little bit. Now, on to the show. We had another poll come out. And you guys love science and technology news just as much as I do. So that's the one that won. It was between nature and science and technology. And nature didn't do so well. But I'm going to keep doing these polls. I really enjoyed the interaction everybody's giving me. So the story is about the largest ever hybrid electrical aircraft taking flight. Now, you know how much I love these helping the environment news stories. So we're killing 2 birds with 1 stone. And the company who started this thing, the company's name is Ampere Inc. Excuse me. And it is a tech startup that's based out in California. And they're geared towards developing high performance, zero emission aircraft. So for those of you who don't know, planes, like all types of aircraft, are actually huge contributors to the emissions, the carbon footprint that we have going on right now. Like all that stuff is, I mean, you gotta, if you really, I mean, okay, so let me start over. I'm in the airfield, you know, like occupation. I work on helicopters. I worked on airplanes before. There is a lot of fuel that gets involved with flying helicopters. You got to think all these people getting on a plane, all that stuff leads to huge emissions, huge carbon buildup. It's not the healthiest of jobs in the world, but this helicopter, this aircraft that we're talking about now is actually, it's crazy what they're doing. They launched their first Amp Air 337, that's what they're calling it, and it took to the skies in a test flight on June 6th. It was very successful. And there's been other hybrid aircraft out there, but this one is super significant because there hasn't been one this big before. And Ampere is being built with a direct path towards commercialism. So like, in other words, they want to move forward with going towards airlines, and they're hoping to get adopted. Like, airlines are even looking into adopting this by 2021. It's a huge step, like I said before, in reducing emissions and the carbon footprint, because if you look in the sky, there's websites you can go and track certain flights and stuff. It is a mess up there. There's actually a lot of traffic. There's a reason there's so many regulations in the sky, not only for safety reasons, but a lot because there's planes flying back and forth. Oh, and quick little little known fact that I found out not too long ago, but for anything that is flying in the sky, like in the world, it doesn't matter if you're in China, it doesn't matter if you're in Europe, whatever country you are flying in or to from, they speak English. The official language of the sky is English, because you can't have these communication barriers when you're flying a bunch of people up in the sky. So I thought that was pretty interesting, and I thought you guys should know. But can you imagine just a few years buying a ticket for a flight that's clean, it's quiet, and not even as expensive because of the hybrid electrical thing that they're doing with this thing? Aviation emissions has a large impact on the environment. And much of the aviation world actually has been searching for cleaner alternatives with cleaner fuel due to both health risks for people working around the airfield and aircraft, and even living at airports and stuff like that. They're kind of like statistically have a younger lifespan. And the aircraft the expensive gas needed to fly these things. So with the success of this test flight, Ampere will be ongoing, and they'll be continuing the test throughout the summer. And hopefully, if everything works out, then by late 2019, they're gonna start this pilot project on a commercial route to Hawaii, to the Hawaiian island of Maui, actually. And from Hawaii to California is not that far, not as far as you think it would be. But they're focused on supplying aircraft to different regions and different airlines that fly quick, short distances, kind of helping serve remote communities and even island regions. They're actually collabing with a regional airline in Puerto Rico to establish a pilot program, and that makes me super happy for obvious reasons. Plus, they have signed a bunch of letters of interest with about 14 other airlines from around the world. So this thing is catching on pretty quickly. I really like this story. And for the nerds out there who want to know how this works, because me being one of those nerds, as well as somebody who works on aircraft, I was super interested in how this thing works, because you got to think the propulsion that's needed to fly so many people through the air it takes a lot. It's not just something simple. But how it works is actually pretty simple. It's got a battery operated electrical motor, which replaces one of two combustion engines. And so you usually have two engines, one on both sides for a bigger aircraft. That's the configuration. And they're replacing one of those engines with a battery operated electrical motor. And this causes what's called a parallel hybrid, which basically means that one of the internal combustion engines works together with the electrical motor, and it pulls the plane through the air. So it's reducing the emissions of one engine, which is huge. And it's based on the 6-seat Cessna 337. It's called the Skymaster. It's just a 6-seat, smaller plane. It's still pretty big for being a hybrid, but Ampere retrofitted the Cessna with a lightweight battery operated electrical propulsion system. I know it sounds like a lot and it sounds complicated, but it's really not. It's pretty simple. And the success of this thing taking off means there'll be more jobs, cleaner environment. We'll have a better overall effective way to travel. And I got excited with this news because it's so obvious that the world is ready to move forward and on from fossil fuels and start going forward with a better method of fuel, So I shared this story. I was super excited to share this story because it contains 4 of my favorite things. 1, you guys voted on it, so we got participation. 2, we're helping the environment. 3, I love working on things that fly in the sky, machines and stuff. And 4, it's creating jobs and opportunities for places that need it, like Puerto Rico and different islands that don't really get as much backing and work as other places do. So I thought that was really important to share. I hope you guys enjoyed that story as well. And bonus story, because we have more people giving us feedback and tagging us and sharing stories with us. This one comes from a friend of the podcast and a listener, Matt Boroughs. And he shared with us a post on how Allstate, Allstate, the insurance company, well, they're collabing and helping support a program that helps veterans transition back to civilian life with a program called No Barrier Warriors. So like over 30% of vets have a tough time transitioning back into basic life. And No Barrier Warriors actually helps them by taking the vets with disabilities through like wilderness challenges, like hiking. The one that he shared the story, they actually hiked 31 miles through the Gila wilderness of New Mexico. Things like that are super important because it helps take their mind off of the stress of everyday life. When you're transitioning, it's hard for a lot of people who have. So like for me, in my case, I can only speak on myself. Everybody takes things differently. But for me, I was a helicopter electrician. Pretty easily to transition over to the civilian side because there's tons of helicopters, there's tons of work like that. But when you have people who are let's say an infantry, or they were doing something like a weapons master, like anything like that, that's super into